A South Korean court was the first in history to remove the president. Ms. Park has been an icon of the conservative establishment which joined Washington's hard line against North Korea's nuclear weapons program. Her downfall could shift South Korean politics towards leaders wanting more engagement and less risk of conflict with North Korea and across the region. They also want to defuse tensions with China, which is increasingly alarmed at American intervention. Ms. Park's removal followed months of unrest as hundreds of thousands of South Koreans regularly took to the streets to protest against high-level corruption scandals in business and government. Despite the former president's Conservative Party's acceptance of the ruling, as the verdict was announced, initial silence amongst thousands of Park supporters near the courthouse turned to violence, and the resulting riots led to at least 2 fatalities. Asia's fourth largest economy will now elect a new president by May the 9th at the latest, with the Liberal candidate Myung-jin tipped as favourite. This could alter plans for what's called the Terminal High Altitude Area Defence, an anti-ballistic missile system designed to protect South Korea from North Korean weapons. Liberal presidents tend to take a softer line on North Korea, and election favourite Moon, a former human rights lawyer, has criticised poor inter-Korean relations and called for economic, political and military unification with Pyongyang. How has the political scandal affected the population? And are the people of South Korea optimistic about the future of their nation? Simple questions with important answers. What are the public's thoughts on the landmark ruling that made Ms. Park Geun-hye South Korea's first president to lose her position by being impeached? We asked them.
I think the impeachment ruling was a matter, of course. It would have been a nonsense to have any one judge vote against the impeachment. When I heard that the decision was unanimous, I told those around me it was only natural.
I think the ruling was to be expected, both on legal and moral grounds. If the impeachment motion had been dismissed, that ruling would have been very humiliating for Koreans. I think the endorsement was a natural course of action.
The country's economy is so bad. I myself am running a small business, and when I ask those around me, many complain the economy is in poor condition. I guess that's why 70 to 80% of the people supported impeachment. People around me are happy about the ruling, and I too think it was the right decision.
I think the Constitutional Court was right to endorse the impeachment. It would have been wrong for the court to dismiss it. I think the decision was only right.
I watched the impeachment ruling with much attention. Park was serving the position of president and yet was played into someone else's hands. I support the ruling and think it was a proper decision.
I think the ruling was appropriate and I support it. President Park Chung-hee clearly committed many wrongdoings, such as illegitimate interference in the government affairs, and even though the Constitutional Court gave her a chance to explain herself, she turned down all the chances herself. She didn't give a convincing explanation and only tried to hide the truth. I think the Constitutional Court made the right decision about all such actions.
I had looked forward to the Constitutional Court ruling for a long time. I think the ruling was proper, and I plan to keep my eyes on future actions.
I think the impeachment ruling was just if this country can move toward the right direction. Park administration failed to listen to the people. For a better government that better integrates people's voices in politics and economics, I think a change of power is only fair.
I think the impeachment ruling was a good decision. I'd like to applaud the Constitutional Court. South Korean presidents have had imperial power. South Koreans couldn't accept that such president had been influenced by an individual with no official position. The Constitutional Court did a great job by awakening the people to think that such happenings should never be repeated. I believe every citizen admits that Park committed wrongdoings.
The impeachment itself is a very healthy sign for South Korea democracy. It is punishing the person or the president who has abused the power, who also maintained so-called corrupted regime. The fact of the matter this time was that people demanded impeachment very, very peacefully and through candlelight demonstration. So I think that this is essentially a very iconic moment for the South Korea who actually went through democratizations and institutionalization of democracy. I think that this is a moment that we upgrade our democracy.
First, it was such a relief. South Korean politics was regressing, but the impeachment was a chance for the people to fix politics.
Are South Koreans optimistic about the future of their nation? Or do they think this legal ruling against their former president will harm South Korean politics for years?
I have a positive view of South Korea's politics and economy in the future. The impeachment was a result of the people's candlelight movement. I believe South Korean people have learned the way to overcome a crisis in case a similar incident happens in the future. So I feel positive about the country's future.
I don't think the impeachment will immediately make a significant change, but as it was the first impeachment of the president in the history of South Korea, I think the decision will serve as a seed for a change in the future. But that change will not happen overnight but steadily. Understandably, there will be some confusion for a while. Although the impeachment is now sealed, not all corruption has been eradicated.
At this point, I think we're more likely to have confusion. Even if the next government is elected, I don't think we've reason to believe the future will be better.
I am hopeful and worried at the same time. There will be confusion and difficulties, and I believe many are now doubtful that one person will make everything fine. And because of that doubt, many will feel confused.
Since this decision is the first of its kind, there can be a lot of confusion. But on the other side, I'm hopeful that this will be the start for a new development.
There can be confusion for a short time, but now that spring has come, I think the future will be brighter.
Well, naturally there will be some confusion for the time, but I believe the political circle will successfully settle the situation with the support of the citizens who made the recent achievement. I'm hopeful.
Since public opinion is severely divided, I suspect the crisis will continue for some time, but South Koreans are diligent, hard-working people. I believe we'll be united again someday. The entire world admires that our country developed to the current state from a heap of ashes left by the Korean War in such a short time. And former US President Barack Obama often mentioned South Korea as a model country. As South Koreans are wise and well-educated, I believe we will overcome this crisis successfully.
There can be a confusion at first because everyone has different positions, but since Park administration failed politically, I expect that confusion will soon change into positive force.
The aftermath of impeachment may look pretty much unstable, but I think that this is a moment that all the dust is coming down on the ground. After that, I think that South Korean politics will be much more healthy and sound because politicians are much more well aware of how conscious people are and how organized citizens are. Every time there's a problem with the government and politics, people will rise, but very peacefully. So I think that politics after the impeachment and election, I think the South Korean politics will be much more healthier and sound and much more sustainable.
I am hopeful for now. It was a fight won by positive minds. But this hope is not definitive. I think it's a process we have to build on from now. Although some elements of the social conflict remain, as they become genuinely settled, I look forward to a more mature society.
A more liberal-minded party is very likely to win the next general election after years of conservative rule. What does the public think about that?
I think a change of power or change of generation is necessary. There are candidates with potential to realize a power change, and I think all of them are proper candidates. Change of power is a must, and if needed, change of generation is desirable.
I certainly think we will have a transfer of power in the coming election, and the Democratic Party's candidate Jae-in seems most likely to win in the election. But I don't think Moon or his party is very trustworthy. When I read his interviews and watch him appear here and there as a registered candidate, I often find him making remarks that don't add up and talking only roughly about policies. I'm especially interested in feminism, and I can't trust the Democratic Party in that regard.
The previous opposition parties are arguing for a change of power now that the past administration was impeached. But in the perspective of common citizens, power change doesn't seem to bring any real change. I've seen Moon Jae-in's Democratic Party take power before, but regardless of power change, the global economy is in a serious recession, and I think the economic difficulties will remain the same.
I think it's better to have different political powers take power alternatively than to have one political party govern repeatedly. The alternating change of power will make politics more balanced and healthy.
Many people called for impeachment through protests, and Park was impeached as the result of the protests. I believe people are prepared for what will follow, whatever administration comes next.
I have identified myself as a conservative, but I think the power change in the coming election is desirable. I hope the ills of the past 10 years to be remedied, and I wish a good candidate to be elected.
I strongly support change of government, and I believe it's natural for the Liberals should take power this time. The new Liberal government should correct the wrongdoings of the two previous Conservative governments, and I personally think a more progressive government should be elected and prepared to redress the wrong. Only then will we be able to fix many of the complicated troubles, such as diplomatic relations with the US and China.
At this moment, I think change is inevitable. Since the Conservatives have hugely disappointed the people, I suspect a Liberal candidate will be elected the next president. That's an accomplished fact. I don't know who will be elected, but I'm certain it will be a Liberal candidate.
I don't think much about power change because an administration will be shaped by a person who gets elected. Regardless of political inclination, I think we have to elect the right person first.
I think a change of power is necessary because not only the people want it, but also the past government's failure will serve as a warning for the following government. Also, current presidential candidates have all gone through assessment and verification. They have had sufficient experiences, so any of them will do a successful job of governing with the lesson from Park administration's failure.
Since the Conservative Party failed twice, I think the Liberals will take power in the next election. The question is, which Liberal candidate will win? The current frontrunner's success will depend on how well he makes himself appeal to voters and attract Conservative voters with policies and opinions.
I think it's good for the democracy of Korea, because that's what democracy is all about. The transfer of power through very peaceful, orderly elections, so that should you have so-called, conservative government or any type of government after a certain period failed and did not meet people's mandate, then people essentially vote them out. I think that's great for any country, and that's how democracy is working. So should we have government represented by the Minju Party, the Democrat Party, and I think that's really good for the country too, which means that we have a peaceful transfer of power after the Candlelight Revolution, and that's good for the country.
I don't think a change in government changes the world. South Korea's historical experiences tell us that the different political power doesn't necessarily promise progress. What matters more than which political force or politician that takes power is what specific policies that politician can implement. If the politician administers wrong policies or ignores necessary policies, the civil society should put in efforts to press the politician. I don't think one specific political power brings around social progress.
Moon Jae-in from the Democratic Party has been leading in polls with a 29.9% approval rating, according to a survey of over 2,000 citizens by the Korea Research Center. This is the highest figure for any of the likely presidential hopefuls. A separate survey also showed the Democratic Party, with 4 presidential candidates in total, obtaining 45.7% support, the most of any political group. Former President Park Geun-hye was very hostile to her neighbors in North Korea. Together with America, she imposed strict sanctions on the North. Would the public like to see the new president take a different approach to the North, and why?
I can't say I'm sympathetic to North Korea. I think the country has many problems, including human rights issues, and it's difficult for me to have a positive view of the country. Although I'm not calling for a war against the country, my opinion is that the next government should do more than being mild. The current hardliners have many defects, but I don't think the general principle should significantly change.
It doesn't seem like the future government will make any significant change in North Korea policies. Myung-jin says he will implement changes. I hope the next government makes agreements with the US and takes steps to solve the North Korean issue.
I'm hoping the possibility of a war to be eliminated. So whoever gets elected, I wish the next government bring the matter closer to peace.
I think the Park administration failed at controlling the intensity of its hard line. Amongst the current presidential candidates, one candidate is arguing for dialogue and cooperation. I wish the candidate to be elected and pursue policies that can stabilise our diplomatic relationships.
We need to be more flexible. It's not a matter of being hawkish or dovish towards North Korea. There can be some aspects to the issue for which we need to take a hard line, but what's more important is peace for both Koreas. That's why the two must keep talking to each other and discuss policies.
I am dissatisfied about such a stance. I am opposed to the Democratic Party's former president, Kim Dong-sung's sunshine policy. Currently, the UN is putting sanctions on North Korea, and the US is considering a secondary boycott, so I have many complaints about those who endorse North Korea. If a Democratic candidate gets elected, I'll be voicing my position on this issue.
Yes, I think there should be a change. Everyone may have different idea, but since the South and North Korea are of one nation, I prefer to see a mild approach.
I don't think hardline policies necessarily benefit South Korea. Our duty is, the more aggressive North Korea becomes, the more relaxed and flexible our response must be. I think the impeachment is also giving us a chance for Koreans to think more broadly about the inter-Korean relationship as the people of the same nation, even when the two states' leaders may have problems.
I think there needs to be consistency. If Park administration was hardline, the next president should also hold on to the same stance, on the condition that it's appropriate.
I think change of any policy, especially regards to North Korea, is a good sign, because we have maintained very hardliner and sanctioning and also patience policy toward North Korea, which means that we virtually did not do anything to get us out of this current situation, so that any constructive, more active policy toward North Korea will be pretty much desirable for the next upcoming administration of South Korea.
Of course, I think the next government should pursue a different North Korean policy. There is a strange idea in South Korean society that conservative political power can handle security issues better, but we need to review the past 10 years of the Lee Mun-bak and the Park Chung-hee administrations. During the 10 years of conservative power, South Korea's state of national security has worsened to its lowest point. The causes were mainly their antagonistic and pressurizing policies towards the North. North Korea is a difficult country. It's an irrational social group. Nevertheless, the realistic conditions require us to meet its true nature. Opening up a dialogue with North Korea can be a start.
So how has this political scandal affected citizens in South Korea?
I founded a startup and have actually received a lot of support from Park administration, which promoted creative economy and provided support to entrepreneurs. In fact, I have lost a lot of subsidies, but regardless of my personal situation, what's wrong is wrong. I have to criticize the administration's wrongdoings, and I am criticizing Park's administration, of course. I think a change of power is necessary.
People around me were all festive when the impeachment ruling came out. There was literally an uproar, but actually not many are particularly interested in politics. I don't think they perceive the ruling to have a huge influence on them as citizens of a national state, but for me, it gave me great hope.
To common citizens, it was so disappointing that Park Geun-hye met a person named Choi Soon-sil during the days of Park Chung-hee administration and had kept the relationship since then. Most people around me felt so bad about the Choi Soon-sil scandal and think that corporate owners, along with Choi, should be tried and punished.
Politics is said to be difficult. Every decision can be good in one aspect and bad in another. Not only myself, but many around me were disappointed by the previous administration. The scandal could have made us distrust politics. I hope it will serve as a chance for the following governments to improve its communication with the people.
At first I felt very angry and dispirited. More than anything, I was angry about the fact that the government committed so much injustice and constantly lied to the people. Being a liberal, I was even more infuriated. It was a chance for me to think deeply about democracy. I could think about citizens' rights and duties that reach beyond voting, such as accountability for politicians.
This political scandal made me take interest in politics on a daily basis. And for the country, I think it provided a chance for people to unite our minds.
I think South Korean people's perception of politics has changed a lot. There used to be many citizens who would rather go out on a picnic on election day, but I think this scandal has awakened many to use their voting rights properly.
Looking back at the past, Koreans have been weak in the face of power. Traditionally, our ancestors pledged absolute obedience to the king for the sake of survival. But our response to this scandal has shown that such tradition no longer stands. My family and acquaintances must have clearly realized this time that if many people put their hands together and stand up, injustice can be fixed.
Many people around me supported impeachment and participated in civil actions. That means the public harboured strong hostility to Park administration. However, the political dynamics were. What matters is that this scandal has united the people. I think that is what's really important.
We're all happy. It's a great moment for Korea because every weekend we went out to Gwanghwamun Square and we celebrated our democracy and peacefully marched.
My acquaintances were all very happy about the decision. It gave them fresh hope. My organisation is soon holding some regular events. I expect to have a discussion about the ruling with other members when we gather. I feel relieved to have the chance to give our children a better world.
The former president now faces prosecutors seeking to charge her with bribery, extortion and abuse of power in connection with allegations of conspiring with a friend to collect tens of millions of dollars in bribes from companies such as Samsung. South Koreans hope for a change under a new president and possibly better relations with the North. But stronger links with Pyongyang would alter relationships with Washington and with Beijing. While this may lead to a bigger role for China, it is hard to see how America would take anything other than a negative view of that and of a more united Korea.